The sound of clinking wine glasses and forced laughter floated through the sliding doors of my parents' oceanfront deck in Cape Elizabeth, Maine. I was inside, supposedly helping Mom with the charcuterie board for Dad's monthly wine club soiree, but really, I was just trying to blend into the marble countertops. At 28, I had perfected the art of presence without participation. "Another poor Grant," Dad's voice rang out, followed by the usual chorus of aged laughter and stock market talk that had nothing to do with me. "I'm Noah Ellison, though lately my family just introduced me as our youngest," said with that particular tone that felt like an apology. 4 years ago, I left Columbia before completing my degree in applied mathematics to build something Dad had dismissed as crypto pipe dreams. What I'd actually been creating was a decentralized infrastructure platform, now used by Fortune 500 companies. But no one at those wine nights ever asked, "How's the vineyard portfolio, Ron?" asked Grant Ellsworth, the investment banker who never let a week pass without name-dropping his Napa holdings. "Solid," Dad answered. His commercial real estate firm was still booming, even though he needed help opening PDFs on his iPhone. Just acquired a strip mall near the marina. "Oh, and the kids?" That was from Tom Bellamy. Made his millions in biotech. Now traded smugness for a hobby. "Carter just made VP at Goldman," Dad beamed. "And Ava's boutique is opening its second Manhattan location next month." I watched him from the kitchen. The way his face lit up when he talked about my siblings. Carter, the finance golden boy. Ava, the trend-setting entrepreneur. And then there was me. Grant squinted. "What's Noah up to?" Dad sighed, the sigh I knew too well. "Still figuring things out. He's working retail, somewhere." That somewhere was actually a market lab inside a flagship tech hub in Boston, where I was overseeing our next-gen wallet beta. But the second I said Apple Store months ago, they stopped listening. "Kids today," Tom muttered. "No drive," Grant agreed. "They want shortcuts." I almost laughed. Because the only shortcut I'd ever taken was staying quiet. They didn't understand that real wealth comes from real work. Real work. I nearly smiled. If only they knew about the 18-hour days I'd clocked these last 4 years, the marathon coding sessions, the cross-country flights to pitch investors who thought I was just another dropout with a pipe dream. They didn't see the rejections, the bootstrapping, the sleepless nights shaping lines of code into systems that now powered global commerce. Mom appeared beside me, smoothing the prosciutto with shaky fingers. "Maybe go upstairs, sweetheart," she whispered. "They get loud when they're on their second bottle." I nodded, ready to vanish. Until the doorbell rang. "I'll get it," I said, grateful to escape. I opened the door to a woman in her 30s, sharp in a navy blazer, holding a leather folio. "Hi. I'm Jessica Larone from Forbes," she said, extending her hand. "I'm here for the exclusive with America's youngest self-made billionaire, Noah Ellison." The tray slipped from my hand, crashing against the foyer tiles. That's me," I stammered. She smiled. "Wonderful. Your story's the kind of innovation meets resilience tale our readers love. Columbia dropout to global fintech disruptor in 4 years. Remarkable." Behind me, the patio hum continued. They had no idea the ground was about to shift beneath them. "Should we set up here?" Jessica asked, glancing around. "This home's got great energy. The built-from-the-basement vibe plays well visually." I almost told her the truth, that this house wasn't the origin of my empire. It was just the place I'd outgrown. Instead, I smiled. "Actually, let's do it on the patio. My family's out there. I think they'd love to meet you." "Perfect," she said brightly. Family angles always elevate the narrative. I led her through the hallway, heart hammering. 4 years of invisibility were about to end, with headlines. I pushed open the French doors. Conversations halted. My father looked up mid-sip. Grant's voice trailed off. Tom blinked. "Dad," I said smoothly, "this is Jessica Larone from Forbes. She's here for an interview." "Forbes?" he repeated, confused. "Yes," I said, smiling. "She's here for me." "Are you writing about the housing market?" Dad asked, setting his beer down. "Happy to give you a few insights." Jessica blinked, clearly caught off guard. "Oh, no, I I think there's been a mix-up. She opened her folio. I'm here to interview Noah about founding CoreQ Systems and turning it into a billion-dollar company. The silence that followed was immediate and suffocating. Dad's bottle froze mid-air. Grant's glass tilted, forgotten. Tom just blinked. "A billion," Dad echoed, his voice nearly a whisper. "Yes," Jessica replied, checking her notes. CoreQ just closed its Series C round. Valuation came in at $1,200,000,000, 0 cents. Noah's our next cover story. From Ivy League dropout to the forefront of quantum technology. I saw Dad's jaw tighten as Jessica continued. Heath pioneered scalable quantum architecture for real-time logistics and medical modeling. Your son's platform is already being adopted by several global firms. Amazon, AstraZeneca, IBM. Tom leaned forward. Quantum, as in the physics thing? Jessica beamed. Noah's team developed the first commercially viable quantum processors for consumer-scale applications. Licensing has already begun. Grant cleared his throat. How much is your stake worth? Jessica answered before I could. With the recent buyout offers, we estimate his personal net worth around $800 million, 0 cents. I added quietly, closer to $950 million, 0 cents now. A pharmaceutical AI contract came through yesterday. Dad looked like he'd been unplugged from the moment, bewildered, his entire worldview rewritten in real time. But you work at the Apple Store, he said, stunned. I do market research there, I clarified. It's part of our human interface development division. Understanding user behavior helps us build better quantum applications. Jessica scribbled rapidly. This family moment is gold. The gap between what they thought you were and who you actually are. Our readers will love that. Evan muttered, so, when you said you were into computer stuff, I was designing the foundational logic for quantum error correction, I said, not unkindly. And for once, no one had anything to say. If you're as stunned as they were, make sure to subscribe, because the next chapter of this story is where the real power shift begins. I nodded. CoreQ developed the algorithms that made commercial quantum computing viable. Across the table, Tom's biotech credentials suddenly seemed a little less impressive. And yes, I added, we've shortened pharmaceutical R&D cycles drastically. What used to take years of molecular simulations can now be done in weeks. We're partnered with a dozen major pharma companies. I watched Tom's jaw clench as it registered. My so-called computer nonsense was actively redefining his industry? This is extraordinary, Jessica said. Can we start setting up for the formal interview? I'd love a few family shots too. The support system behind the success. The port system. I glanced at Dad, who hadn't spoken since hearing the word billion. Actually, I said smoothly, let's start with some background. Dad, why don't you tell Jessica about how supportive the family has been throughout my journey? The trap was quiet, surgical. Jessica lifted her pen with interest. Dad opened his mouth, then closed it again. Twice. We've always believed in Noah's potential, he said finally, voice tight. Jessica smiled brightly. That's wonderful. And what was your first reaction when Noah told you about the company? Another pause. Longer. We were intrigued by the possibilities. Kevin and Tom shifted in their seats, realizing this wasn't just an interview, it was a reckoning. Can you share a specific moment when you realized Noah was building something truly special? Jessica asked. There was a time, Dad stammered, when he explained the technical side, and we were amazed. There was no such time. Every time I tried to explain, I'd been met with sighs and questions about returning to college. And financially, Jessica continued, I assume the family played a role in early-stage funding? Silence again. I stepped in. Initial funding came from venture capital. The family's been supportive in other ways. Of course, Jessica nodded. Emotional backing is often more important than money. She turned back to Dad. What advice did you give Noah during those tough early years? He hesitated, lost, probably trying to recall if get a real job counted as advice. I always told Noah to follow his passion, Dad said at last. Jessica leaned in slightly. Even when others might have been skeptical about a college dropout starting a tech company? Dad nodded, his voice suddenly stronger, rewriting the past in real time. Especially then. I've always believed that the traditional path isn't for everyone. It was almost impressive, watching 3 years of silence and dismissal morph into fatherly wisdom like a well-rehearsed script. That's a beautiful sentiment, Jessica said, smiling. And now that CorQ's valued over $1 billion, you must be incredibly proud. Beyond proud, Dad said, and that part at least rang true. Honestly, we always knew Noah was different. Kevin and Tom nodded in agreement, likely revising their own history as they recalled every time they rolled their eyes at my computer hobby. Jessica glanced at me. This has been such a rich background segment. Shall we start the formal interview? Let's do it right here, I said. I think Dad and his friends might enjoy hearing the real version of the story. Jessica lit up at the idea and began setting up her mic and recorder. I helped Mom bring out extra chairs. The mood on the patio shifted. Less golf club and more spotlight. So, Noah, Jessica began, voice crisp and clear, take us back. What made you drop out of Columbia to launch CorQ? I looked Dad straight in the eye. I realized that the kind of innovation I was chasing wouldn't wait for a degree. I had ideas that demanded action. And your family's reaction? Jessica asked. They thought I was making the biggest mistake of my life, I said plainly. There was disappointment, fear, doubt. Dad shifted in his chair, visibly uneasy. But that pushed you, Jessica prompted. It taught me that belief in yourself has to be louder than the doubt around you, especially when that doubt comes from people you love. For the next hour, I told the truth. The sleepless nights, the investor rejections, the breakthrough that changed everything, and how I was building the future while they never even noticed. I continued, right now we're working with biotech firms to reduce drug development cycles from years to months. The implications for cancer therapies, orphan diseases, personalized medicine, it's staggering. Tom leaned in. What kind of firms? I listed 3 of his fiercest competitors, by name. I watched the realization spread across his face. They were already integrating technology his company hadn't even heard of. Jessica turned to me. And the financials? Forbes estimates your personal net worth at nearly $1 billion. How does that feel? At 28? I glanced at Dad, his beer set untouched, condensation pooling around the base. It feels like validation, I said quietly. For 4 years, I was the dropout, the failure, the one wasting potential. I paused. Now I employ over 800 people, and we're just getting started. Jessica leaned forward. What's next for CorQ? We're announcing a major expansion next month, I said. Quantum-powered AI, the kind that will make today's machine learning models look like toys. Her eyes lit up. And consumer products? I smiled. Let's just say, if smartphones were the spark, quantum computing is the wildfire. The interview wrapped soon after. Jessica packed up with promises of a feature-length cover next month. Once she left, silence took her place. Tom and Grant muttered polite goodbyes and retreated, no doubt already fact-checking everything I'd said. Dad and I remained as the coastal sunset turned the sky into something torn between fire and forgiveness. He cleared his throat. I owe you an apology. You owe me several, I replied. It wasn't cruel, just the truth. I should have asked, he said. Should have listened. Should have tried to see what you were doing. Yeah, I said, you should have. The disappointment line, he added, to my friends, that was real. I nodded. It was. You meant it. He stared at his hands. I was disappointed in what I thought success meant. Degrees, titles, portfolios, not this. He looked up. Not a son building something I can't even grasp, something changing the world. We watched the sun sink low. What now? He asked. I exhaled. Now? You get to tell your golf buddies the disappointment is worth $950 million, 0 cents? Though I suspect they'll Google me long before next month's wine gathering. And us? Dad asked quietly. Our relationship? I thought for a moment. 3.5 years of doubt, dismissal, and side comments couldn't be erased by one afternoon with a journalist. But they didn't have to be permanent, either. "We figure it out," I said, "but next time I tell you I'm working on something important, maybe ask a few more questions before writing it off." He nodded. "Next time I'll listen." "Good," I said, standing, "because Core Q is just the beginning. And I'd rather you understand what I'm building now than read about it in Forbes later." The next morning, my phone didn't stop buzzing. Word had spread like wildfire through Dad's wine group and business circles. Suddenly, everyone wanted to reconnect with the family dropout turned billionaire. But one call mattered most. David. My older brother, the junior partner, the golden child. "Noah," he said, "I owe you an apology. We all do." "You don't owe me anything," I replied, "but thanks. Mom said Forbes is doing a cover next month." "Can I ask you about the company?" he said, voice uncharacteristically soft. "Really ask? Really listen?" For the first time in years, a family member didn't sound condescending or skeptical. He sounded curious. "I'd like that," I said. Sarah called an hour later. Then Mom. Then even Dad again. This time asking specific questions about quantum applications in commercial real estate. 3 weeks later, the article dropped. The dropout who disrupted everything ran across a full page in Forbes, featuring a photo of me standing in the entryway of my parents' coastal home, tailored blazer and all. The article traced my journey from misunderstood dropout to tech visionary. Family quotes peppered the profile, lines about unwavering support and quiet pride. I didn't correct them, let them have their version. The truth was more complex, but what mattered now was the future. 6 months later, Core Q's consumer division launched with record demand. Quantum power-powered smartphones made global headlines. Our pharmaceutical breakthroughs turned years of research into weeks. We partnered with NASA. And my family? They started asking better questions. Dad began reading MIT Tech Review. Sarah explored quantum diagnostics. David dove into policy around emerging tech. They didn't become experts, but they became interested. They became involved. They became present. Family gatherings changed. Golf scores made room for questions about superconducting qubits and machine-learned drug models. I wasn't the cautionary tale anymore. I was the headline. Year after Forbes, Dad hosted another wine patio night. When Kevin asked, "How's Noah doing?" Dad didn't pause. "Noah just announced a partnership with NASA, quantum systems for autonomous space navigation," he said, chest lifted. "Corky's worth over $3 billion, $200 million, 0 cents now." Bob blinked. "You saw this coming?" Dad looked out across the lawn. For a moment, I thought he'd finally tell the truth. Instead, he smiled. "Let's just say Noah taught us something about not judging potential by traditional standards. It wasn't exactly the truth, but it was growth. And sometimes, growth matters more than being right." I listened from the kitchen, no longer avoiding the spotlight, this time preparing to walk into it, not as a disappointment, but as Noah Ellison, their son who was changing the world. Some victories are measured in billions, but the ones that last, they're measured in recognition, in respect,